Hi everyone, welcome back. This is such an exciting video for me. I hope for you as well. But we are here to celebrate the release of A Very Fairy Funeral, the first in a paranormal cozy mystery series. We're going to talk all about this book, all about the series, all about the premise, kind of how it came about. Hopefully we'll see what happens. But we're mostly going to celebrate the birth of this book. It just came out this week. So you are going to be seeing this on the Sunday. It just came out on the Tuesday. I was very busy promoting it all over the place and booking signings and all of that stuff. So I didn't have a chance to go on the day of and do like a live or something like that or drop a video then. So I'm doing it today and we're going to do a fun giveaway at the end of this video as well. I'm going to read an exclusive excerpt. It's going to be super fun. Now, before we start, two things. One, we are doing this through construction. I live in a condo. So we live in a condo that is basically like a 2-floor condo. So almost like a townhouse. However, not really a townhouse because we're surrounded by the people. And the people next door are doing construction. I don't know what they're doing, but there's a lot of drilling and some hammering. So hopefully a lot of it will get muted by my mic, but if it doesn't, I apologize if you hear some I will try to, if it gets really bad, I'll stop and I'll cut the video and I'll start again, hopefully when they stop. So apologies. And secondly, welcome to the channel. I'm Vanessa. I am an author from Toronto, Canada. I publish under the pen name A.N. Sage, and I write mystery, a lot of cozy mysteries right now. I also write young adult fantasy. I am starting to work on some thrills and some children's books. So I'm kind of very widespread as far as the genres that I write. And on this channel, I share pretty much everything that I learn as I kind of publish more and more books. I have been both indie and traditionally published. And so I try to kind of show my experience from both areas. I talk about anything creative. I talk about planners. I talk about stickers and stationery because I love those so much. I talk about books and tools, different things, pretty much anything that kind of helps me in my writing and kind of doing this sort of full-time. I say sort of full-time because I am all around in publishing, but writing is a third of my income and what I do. The other two is I am also a book coach. If you're looking for a book coach, hit me up. The link is below. And I'm also a book cover designer. Same sentiment. I'm always looking to work with new authors, new people. I love to chat, clearly, as you might have known from this video. And so meeting new writers and authors is just a fantastic way for me to stay abreast of the situation. But speaking of abreast of the situation, this baby is why we're here. So thank you for joining me. I love these videos. I do have several releases that happen throughout the year. So we do get release videos fairly often. Well, not fairly often, but every 3 or 4 months. I think you can probably hear the hammering more so now. But we do get releases every few months here, and I'm super excited every single time. But this one I am especially thrilled about because this is, so if you haven't read any of my other books, I have a series that just got wrapped up last year with a holiday novella. That was the last book in the series, the 7th book in the series, and that was Orchard Hollow. And Orchard Hollow was the same world as this book takes place in. However, it follows a very different cast. The lead is a reluctant kind of witch who has a ghost familiar, a snarky ghost familiar. There's a raccoon that causes trouble, just a regular raccoon. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens there. There's an entire cast of people. There's mysteries from every book. And there's an overarching mystery that kind of carries you to the full series. It's not in the novella because the novella only has one short mystery in it. But when that book wrapped up, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I kind of pitched this idea to my publisher to see if they would go for it. And they did. They loved it. So we decided to do a spin-off series from Orchard Hollow. So this book is still set in the same town. So Orchard Hollow there. And there are nods to some of the characters. There's nods to some of the businesses that you know and love from Orchard Hollow. But it's completely different cast. It's a very different sleuth. And it's a very different magic storyline because it is a paranormal cozy mystery. So in this book, we had the witch in the other one and the ghost familiar. But in this book, we actually have Lyra Moore. they were drilling, so I had to stop talking, but I'm back. So Lyra Moore is a fairy who is basically an Orchard Hollow because she's on the run from the Fae, from fairy. She is a portal fairy, the only portal fairy that has been around for centuries. And she was able to open a portal and escape her arranged marriage to the prince of the Shadow Court. So that's kind of a little premise, little background on Lyra. And that is our amateur sleuth. So as you can probably imagine, so Lyra, because she's kind of in hiding, she stays away from people. She keeps to herself. She also happens to be the funeral home director at Mistbrook Manor. So Mistbrook Manor Cozy Mysteries is the name of this series. And Mistbrook Manor is the funeral home in Orchard Hollow. And if you've read Orchard Hollow, specifically if you've read Devil in the French Press, then you know that Piper, the lead, the witch from that series, goes to visit the funeral home to try to kind of sleuth out clues for a case that she is working on. We don't get to meet Lyra. That was on purpose because she is not around at the time, but we do kind of get a sense of the funeral home. And so the funeral home is very atmospheric. It's kind of like a Victorian manor, and it's a funeral home. So it's got it's got a lot of personality to it and itself. And Lyra runs it. So as I'm sure as you can imagine, most people don't really drop by the funeral home for no reason. So she is doing a great job staying in hiding until a dead body beckons her forward. Or not a dead body. So before we get to the actual premise of the book, I will talk to you about the other little character that we have. So as you know, I always have some sort of animal in my books for some reason, but there's always something. There's always an animal sidekick. And in this case, we have a cat, but it's not just any cat. This is Theodore, Theo for short. And Theo is actually a changeling from fairy that is stuck in a cat's body. So he talks. He's a talking cat, which is very different from the raccoon in Orchard Hollow. But Theo got kind of trapped in this cat's body because, as he says it, because of a clerical error. However, it is actually because that he is so annoying and such an attitude-filled changeling that he got into a fight with a person who is in assignments that sends the changelings to her to take over the babies and steal them and take their place. And because he got on this person's nerves, he actually bound him to a cat's body here. So instead of putting him in a baby body, he put him in a cat body. So now Theo's stuck. And he only has Lyra for company. They both only have each other. So I'm sure you could imagine the shenanigans there. And so that is kind of the duo, the main duo. But we have more, right? Because if you've read, let me read you the back copy of this book so you can see. An introverted fairy, a secret society of undertakers, and a talking cat. What a deadly combination. So the Undertakers, I knew that I wanted to have a bigger cast of sleuths in this series, and I wanted it to be interesting. And I've always been really, really into secret societies. And when I started toying around with the idea of like the fairy and the talking cat and the funeral home, and I was like, what kind of secret society could we have here that hasn't already really been done as far as I know? Maybe, I mean, nothing is new, but as far as I know, things that I've read, I have not read this. And so I figured, why not a secret society of undertakers, of funeral home directors, of morgue directors, of people who work with the dead. And they could be a secret society that solves crimes that the police cannot solve. Because they have this this direct connection to dead bodies. It's like a revolving door of possible cases for Lyra and the team. And so I figured that would be perfect. And so I also wanted to give a bigger cast because I wanted Lyra, who is very in hiding to herself, I wanted her to really come out of her shell. And so having a lot of new people that are in her life all of a sudden would do that. And so we have a secret society of undertakers. So that's kind of the premise of the book. As you can see, I can't stop smiling because I just love this premise so much. I think it's so fun. I haven't read anything exactly like it. And so I was really, really excited to write this book. I'm currently finishing book 2, actually. And the announcements for that are going to come out. But today is about this, so I'm going to keep it to the first book. So speaking of the first book, I'm going to read you kind of like, I'll put the blurb also in the description, but I'll read it here right now to give you an idea of the book. And then I thought what we could do is I could read an excerpt, one of the shorter chapters from the book, and then we'll do a giveaway. And that'll be our little celebration. So here's the blurb for the book. In the Mistbrook Manor Funeral Home, Lyra Moore prefers the company of the dead to the living. As a fairy in hiding and the town's funeral director, she's perfected the art of staying out of the spotlight until an unclaimed body appears on her doorstep under mysterious circumstances. No one knows who the victim is or how he died, but Lyra is determined to leave the case to the authorities. She does not need any more strangers knocking on her door, at least not breathing ones. Unfortunately, life outside Fairy has other plans. When Lyra returns home to find an odd man lurking in her living room, he claims to be a detective, yet Lyra can see right through his lies, even without her fairy magic. Reluctant to leave well enough alone, Lyra stumbles on a secret society of undertakers with a unique calling, solving crimes. With her own magic to conceal and a bratty talking cat, who happens to be a changeling stuck in feline form thanks to an administrative slip-up and a foolish feud, Lyra finds herself entangled in the mystery with no way out. But can she crack the case while keeping her magical secret, or will the truth refuse to stay buried? So that's kind of the blurb for the book. And I'm sure, as all of you know, there's always like a romantic B-plot to everything, all right? Because I love romance. I love love. I love death and love, it seems. There we go. That is that's my thing. I love love and I love death. So that's kind of what we're going for with this book. So there's always a romantic B-plot. And in this book, the detective, the so-called detective that she stumbles on, that's kind of like rummaging around the funeral home, is one of the undertakers, right? So she follows him, stumbles upon the undertakers and all of that. And there is a romantic kind of entanglement, which is very interesting for Lyra because she ran away from an arranged marriage to somebody that she really truly despises. And now she's kind of in this human world and might be falling for a human. So we'll see how that turns out. Read the series to find out. So I don't know. Tell me in the comments what you think of this whole premise. Like, am I just really so out there that this is like absolute? Do you think this is so bizarre and strange, like all these combinations of things? Or do you think it will be fun? Because I think it will be fun, but I'm a little weirdo. So let's read a chapter. We are reading chapter, I marked it off, chapter 8. Do you guys like my very fancy bookmark? It's a bunch of furry stickers that I got from my daughter. And she is kind of young, so I'm stealing them. And oh my God, I just realized we didn't do, so this, I mean, I've been holding it up the whole time. So you saw the cover, but look at the spine. Isn't that so cute? And then the back with the roses. So the roses are a big deal. So Lyra, she's part of the summer court, and so she's a green fairy, but she's also a portal fairy, like I mentioned. And when you read, I kind of like the world, her life in fairy. I untangle it from book to book, so because it's not like the main story, and so that's kind of like the overarching thing here, and her being on the run and all of that, and that's going to develop really interestingly, I think. But I kind of untangled that. So she is a green fairy as well. And so the roses are important. And they're going to be a different color in every book cover and in every book. And there is going to be a story for that. There's going to be a reason for that. So I've already thought ahead for every single book cover and what I'm going to do for the colors, because I did design this myself. So I told you I'm a cover designer at the beginning, but I get to design my own book covers as well. That was one of the things that I kind of made sure was in my contract with the publisher that I really, because I really love it. So anyway, so every cover is going to have a different color of roses, so different color of the cover as well. And that's kind of the thing here. So let's read chapter 8 before they start drilling again. So chapter 8. If someone were to ask me to list the most pivotal moments of my life, I could do so in a single breath. Leaving Fairy, buying the funeral home, and today. But this moment seemed to eclipse all the others. I stared at the 4 strangers in front of me, my mouth dry and my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. Disbelief turned to unease, then spiraled into outright panic as the weight of their silent glares pressed down on me. My chest felt like a vice had been clamped over it, each turn of the invisible bolts driving the air from my paper-thin lungs. The room, an expansive underground chamber, seemed alive in the worst way. It was shrinking, impossibly, alarmingly shrinking. The dark stone walls wavered as if they were made of smoke, then solidified again, only closer. They pressed inward, creeping with a determination that felt more terrifying than architecture should. The books lining the shelves rattled violently, their spines vibrating against the wood in a warning. I half expected them to leap from their places and hurtle toward me, each thud of their quaking bindings matching the thunder of my pulse in my ears. My body trembled uncontrollably, the vibration seeping into my bones. My feet felt rooted to the floor. "Wonderful. You broke her," a snarky voice remarked. I shook out my anxiety and faced a young woman who had one eyebrow raised high enough to touch her hairline. My skin crawled from her icy glare. "What are the Grim Wardens exactly?" I finally uttered. It was Mortimer who spoke instead. The man folded his arms over his chest and turned his serious gaze on me. I instantly felt like a child being scolded. Mortimer seemed to have that effect because even the detective, who I very much doubted was one, shrank in size. To better explain who the Grim Wardens are, it is best to start with how we became to be, Mortimer said. It may come as no surprise that the four of us have things in common. Wait, are they fairies? We all share the same profession. Ah, right, that makes more sense. Noticing the confusion plastered on my face, the old man smiled, his teeth sparkling. That's right, Miss Moore. Everyone in this room is an undertaker. Ellie Blackwood and Rosemary Singh run the funeral home over at Graceling Heights. Mr. O'Malley, Finn, is the morgue director for Holbeck General Hospital, and I am the proud owner of the Colville Funeral Home. I took note of the town names he mentioned, realizing they all circled around Orchard Hollow. In fact, the cemetery was smack dab in the center of all their locations. I wondered if it was why they chose to meet here, but mostly I wondered how no one knew the secret lair they used existed. As though reading my mind, the fake detective motioned around the room, saying, "This mausoleum has been part of my wife's family line for many generations. The Starlings originated in Orchard Hollow, but unfortunately, there's no one left to carry on the line." He paused, his face darkening. Jenny's grandfather was a bit of an eccentric and built his library beneath the tombs. It seemed to be a natural place for us to meet. "Does Jenny know about your group?" Finn's jaw worked itself out. "Jenny died 5 years ago, but to answer your question, she did. It was her idea to join." A deep-rooted sadness banged against my ribcage. Finn may have deceived me and broken into my home, but to hear that he lost someone so important to him broke my heart. I had seen my fair share of widowers at the funeral home, and nothing could quite compare to that loss. Though Finn appeared to be cool and collected, I knew that a piece of him was missing. It was a terrible thing to imagine. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. If he heard me, he didn't reply. Instead, Finn took one small step back to give Mortimer room to come forward to finish the story. A notion the older man was more than happy to receive since he all but leaped into action. His face was animated, and his hands moved as quickly as he spoke. "Years ago, a body arrived at my funeral home," Mortimer explained. The death baffled the local police, who spent months working the case with little success. After a while, the case went cold, and other matters took the attention of the local law enforcement away from the woman, Allie Cambridge. I pressed a hand to my chest. "That's awful." "It is, but sadly it is also quite common," Rosemary added. "Very common indeed," Mortimer agreed. "Well, the police forgot all about poor Allie. I never could, so I took it upon myself to dig deeper. After a lot of work that had nothing to do with my position as an undertaker, I found out how the woman died. Her family had closure. It was the single greatest moment of my entire career." My brows knit together. "And it made you start a secret club?" Mortimer chuckled. "Not exactly," he said. "It was a few years before our group came together. After what happened with Allie, I continued to do my job and keep my nose down. That is until Ellie and Rosemary showed up on my doorstep. It seemed word got around about what I did, and they had an odd case of their own that they wanted to solve. It was no surprise that after working in concert, we knew we had to keep going. We were helping people in ways we never could as simple undertakers. It was an honor to bring peace to the families left behind. His eyes landed on me, as I'm sure you could imagine. He was right. I truly could imagine how amazing it would feel to give John Doe's family the closure they needed. I nodded slowly. Gaze darting to Finn, I asked, "How did you get involved?" "That's a story for another time," he answered. That's not at all ominous. My head ached from the onslaught of information. How was this even possible? A secret society of crime-solving undertakers was unbelievable enough, but to find out their lair had been beneath the portal to Fairy this entire time was mind-boggling. It was too much to be pure coincidence, and a part of me wondered if I didn't walk in on some elaborate setup created to lure in a fairy in hiding. I raked my gaze over the group. Nope, there was no way these people were anything but human. A fae wouldn't be hiding out underground. The fairies were a proud bunch, and if they were gallivanting around town, solving crimes, rest assured, they'd want the glory that went along with it. Whatever this was, magic didn't touch it. I took a stab at a smile, but it came out lopsided and awkward. "Why were you skulking around Mistbrook?" I asked Finn. The burly man shrugged. "We needed information on your John Doe." "To solve a case?" A throat cleared behind me. I followed it to Rosemary, who was leaning against the towering bookshelf a few feet away. She tossed her shiny locks over her shoulder and closed the book she held, tucking it under her arm. The sleeve of her dress swallowed it whole. "To solve his case," she said. "We don't believe that he died of a heart attack." "How did you—" The words fell away from my lips. I deadpanned on Finn. "The hospital renovating their morgue. That's where you work, isn't it?" He nodded. "That's how you knew about the heart failure and where to find the body, where to find me." Another confirming nod. "And?" His eyes rounded. "And what?" I shook my head in frustration and rubbed my aching temples. "Did you get what you were looking for?" When he didn't answer, I added, "Your hospital ran a tox report. What did it say?" The entire room shifted to look at me. Each undertaker took a step forward, encroaching on my personal space and making me wish to turn invisible. Too bad that wasn't a fairy skill I could connect to, because if it was, yours truly would be gone in a blink. I rolled up my shoulders. "You did know about the report, didn't you?" "We did not," Ellie said. She turned away from me and opened the laptop, furiously typing frantic words into it. A moment later, she glowered. "She's right. There's a report, but it hasn't come back yet." "They must have run it recently, or else I'd have seen it in his file," Finn said. "How did you know about it?" Mortimer asked. I crooked a smirk at him. "The police had the file on John Doe," I answered. "I may have accidentally read it." There was a long silence that stretched out for what seemed like hours as the three exchanged worried looks. Their eyes zapped from each other to me, then back again. The entire display had me crawling out of my skin. I felt as if I had walked into a joke that everyone else was in on except me. And after another few minutes of agony, Rosemary breathed out a long, slow breath. "She'll fit right in." "Where?" I asked. "Here? With you?" They didn't have to reply to tell me I was right. What is happening right now? Was I being invited to join their bizarre club? And if so, why would I consider it? The last thing I needed was to put more attention on myself, and being part of a crime-solving society would not do me any favors. No, what I needed to do was turn around and march out of here immediately. Forget I ever met these people and wipe the entire day from existence. Go back to my quiet, empty home. Laugh about all of this with Theo. And yet, my chin tilted, head lolling backward. I studied the ceiling under the mausoleum, the hair on my arm standing straight. We were directly under the portal here. If something were to happen and the blasted thing was to open, the undertakers would be in serious trouble. Not to mention that I would surely raise suspicion showing up near their hiding place regularly to throw my magic into the doorway. Just because I hadn't seen them before all this didn't mean our paths wouldn't cross again, especially now that I knew where they spent their time. The frown lines around my mouth deepened. What to do? "What do you say, Lyra?" Mortimer asked. I grimaced. "I'm not sure." "How about you help us find out what happened to your John Joe and decide after," Rosemary suggested. "No pressure." I inspected the watchful gazes of the three before me. Well, two before me. Finn appeared to want nothing to do with me or the invitation they extended. Still, it was interesting what they were suggesting, and I had to admit, I did desperately want to find John Doe's family. My spine uncurled. I looked at the group, my resolve hardening. You know what? Let's do it, I said. Mortimer and Ellie side-glanced each other while Rosemary came over to shake my hand again. Finn stayed rooted in place, his face unreadable. With every passing second, my stomach churned. Did I make the right decision? Would it come back to haunt me later in life? So many questions swirled in my brain that I couldn't breathe. Turning away from the group, I raked my gaze over the room and thought about the odd situation I'd landed in. One step at a time. And that was the only thing I could do, wasn't it? There was no manual written for joining a secret society of undertakers. I tapped my chin. Perhaps I could write one. So that was chapter 8. I thought it was, you're flipping. For some reason, when I picked it, I thought it was a little bit shorter. So hopefully you enjoyed the full chapter. It was weird to stop kind of halfway through, so I figured we'd read the whole thing. But I hope you enjoyed that little excerpt. It's not anywhere else, so you're the only ones to actually hear it. But if you want to read the rest of this, then make sure to get the book. The link is below. Now, for the giveaway. Just to celebrate this, tell me about your favorite, so 2 options. Either tell me about your favorite book that has a funeral home in it, in the comments, or tell me about your favorite fairy court out of the ones that are out there. They're all, like summer, spring, winter, or whatever. So out of all the fairy courts, tell me your favorite one or your favorite book with the funeral home in it. So let me know in the comments. So the giveaway is for Canada and US only because shipping is whack, y'all. So I apologize, but make sure that you're in one of those if you are entering. And make sure to give this video also a thumbs up. And if you want to share about this giveaway or the book or anywhere on social media, I will forever love you. So thank you for coming here to help me celebrate. I am so excited about this book coming out. And I actually have a book club meeting right now for Fiction Focus. So I'm going to run off and do that. And again, a million thank yous for joining me. I hope you get the book. I hope you love it. And I will see you next week for another writing video. Bye.